Well, hello and happy Monday. I am checking in from the Crossette at Cannes, and my first discussion of the day was with Dr. Mark Grether, the head of PayPal Ads. We talked about something interesting, which is there's so many announcements and news about retail media. It's a constant news cycle, and actually PayPal Ads is doing something different at Cannes, which is they are not announcing any new features, product announcements, partnerships, which is the typical approach to Cannes to get people to your sessions and stay in the news cycle. Instead, they are focused on making sure that the market really understands what the existing PayPal Ads capabilities are. Let's listen in to a few highlights from my conversation with Dr. Mark Grether.
I think the biggest thing for us is really the fact that we have the data across all the merchants. Okay. Right? We really sit horizontally across all merchants versus any other retail media publisher. I wouldn't call them network because they're typically a publisher. They see only in isolation what happens on their side, right? And so let's say you run a campaign with this kind of Seattle-based company and you might run a CTV campaign. Well, they can only measure if a transaction happens on their own website, right? Versus we can then show whether a transaction happens on any merchant website and can bring it back to then the exposure in, let's say, CTV. Right? And having that kind of horizontal view across all merchants is a much stronger value proposition and really truly shows the actual ROAS that a campaign achieves, right? And so that's, for example, an example of leveraging the transaction data horizontally is a powerful differentiator. But again, it takes time to kind of truly understand it, leveraging it, and make the best out of it.
Yeah, that's a huge pain point for advertisers is, well, I run a campaign here, I can see the results of that campaign from that merchant, but not beyond.
My point is really about we don't need to kind of come up with the next new thing.
Yeah.
Right? As an industry, we have already so much.
Yeah.
Let's just double down. I remember classic example, you go to in the supermarket and you see the 10 different versions of cornflakes. And as a consumer, you're overwhelmed and you're not buying anything. Versus if there are only two flavors, you pick one of the two. Right? And we are a little bit in the same scenario where we have so many things. Whether it's now so many retail media networks out there, everyone is having 50 features, and then the buyers, agencies, and advertisers alike, they're overwhelmed.
Totally.
And they go back to what is easy, let's buy Amazon. Let's buy Walmart. It's easy, I understand them, I'm not getting fired for it, I'm just easy peasy, right? And so I think we as kind of the challengers, we need to almost also need to come together and say, okay, what is our one-stop solution that is so easy and still has the scale to perform? Right, and so, for example, there's, as you may know, in September there's Showcase, the new kind of the upfronts, the upfronts for the retail media industry, and I think that is a great opportunity for us to come together and say, let's make it easy.
Next, I was really curious about how PayPal Ads is approaching their shoppable ad units, and as I said to Dr. Mark Grether, there's been a long history of unsuccessful shoppable ads products in the past. And so my question was, what makes PayPal's shoppable ads different and more likely to be adopted by both publishers and consumers? Let's listen.
I think there are two main things which are different. One of which is that we have our own ID, right? We have the PayPal identity. And the big difference with our ID is versus, let's say, a cookie solution is we must know from a payments perspective that Joe actually is Joe and not his twin brother, right? Because we want to make sure that the money that we get from Joe is actually from Joe, or the money that I'm sending to Joe actually goes to Joe, and to someone who looks and feels like Joe but is not actually Joe. Whereas in the ads world, if I'm using a cookie-based solution, it might be Joe, it might be someone else, who knows, right? which obviously for shoppable ads doesn't work. Right, for shoppable ads, I must know that actually the person who is shopping is actually Joe. So identity is the key differentiator, number one. Number two is with PayPal, we already have the payment rails. Starting from, we have his address, his bank address, his postal address. We have everything that we need to actually fulfill the order, right? And hence, in our case, we truly can make this kind of process much more frictionless, and at the same time making sure it is actually Joe. We have all the fraud protection in the background, which we're leveraging from payments. So from that perspective, we're basically leveraging the strength of PayPal and now just applying it in a new environment, which is the creative itself, as opposed to a checkout. And that means now for our merchants that they can basically increase the reach of their own storefront, which is why we call it storefront ads. So the idea is that your storefront is no longer just your website, but wherever you're actually getting in front of a consumer, you can turn that kind of interaction into a storefront, right? You get more reach, you get more frequency, for example, with campaigns or a company like Adorama, right, where we are leveraging storefront ads, they have seen on the one hand very high ROAS, as I mentioned earlier, right, something like between 7 and 8. But what they also saw is a lot of kind of incremental new users. Something like 15% of the users were actually new to them. So it's a conversion kind of booster to them. It's a tool for them to acquire new users, which they otherwise wouldn't have get access to.
Miracle Ads is the only retail media solution designed for both 1P and 3P marketplace brands. Why does that matter? Marketplace sellers demand a seamless advertiser experience that still offers full funnel ad formats. And retailers need a flexible solution that allows you to scale your media business. Learn more at miracle.com. That's MIRAKL.com. Example.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm showing an ad for a random product that I've never seen before, and it's like
exactly.
buy now button. It's more. I've been looking at a DSLR camera.
Yes.
And then I'm obviously considering that.
Yeah.
Based on some activities, and then an ad is shown to me, like, you know what, I'm gonna check out.
Exactly, right? And as opposed to now going through 10 clicks, right? Where you click on the ad, you go to a landing page, you need to fill out your address, you need to look up your credit card and everything, right? All of that is basically collapsed into 1 or 2 clicks, right? And so the point from getting exposed to the ad to actually making a purchase, that whole kind of funnel, so to speak, is getting collapsed into 1 or 2 steps, which then is increasing the conversion rate. And what's also interesting is why also not only the merchants like it, but also the publishers is because in the old world, you see the Adorama ad, right? Let's say on your newspaper, you click on it, you leave the newspaper, you go to Adorama, eventually make the purchase, but you will never come back to the newspaper. You're gone, right? If, however, the transaction happens in the ad itself, you stay on the newspaper website.
From a consumer perspective as well, what are some of the barriers that have meant that shoppable ads haven't really worked so far in the past versus this kind of setup?
I think the main differentiator is really the identity. And the fact that, again, we already have the payment rails, right? In the past, if it's cookie-based, you still have to identify yourself. And you need to put in your credit card details and your address, and doing that in the creative is quite kind of cumbersome. And then what's the point? And it's easier to just click on it and go to the landing page and go through the process on the landing page that you're used to, right? Which defeats the whole purpose. Versus in our case, you can do everything in the creative.
Do you have some images of, can you send those to me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing, I think maybe the other interesting thing is that the merchants, I would argue, have now more pressure. What I mean by that is that a lot of the consumer behaviors now starts on LLMs. And eventually, the journey also ends on the LLMs, right? Which means the merchants see less and less traffic on their own websites, which obviously is a big worry to them. And so they need to think about, okay, if the consumers are no longer coming to me, how can I get in front of the consumers? And how can I, once I'm in front of the consumers, maximize the conversion rates? And again, that's where Shoppable Ad comes in. So it's kind of almost an extension of their own storefront to kind of fight the fact that consumers might otherwise not come to them anymore. So meaning they have also some strategic kind of now almost pressure, right? To kind of take it more seriously.
Well, that's it for this discussion. I'm going to keep checking in with you throughout the week from Cannes with tidbits of conversations, observations, and snippets of conversations like this one that you heard today. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you soon.